1800s, is Nevin Fenn's geology. Fenn was a professor here at the university. He has quite a detailed look at the area with photographs of locations that, for all intents and purposes, no longer exist. They're overgrown, eroded, built over, that sort of thing. The other thing that Fenneman has is, in common with some of the materials that John was showing you, very beautiful, if delicate, maps of the county showing the elevations and the geology back at that time. And when you have put together your expanded knowledge, then it's time to start stretching by really getting into the meat of the matter. What do you do with fossils? What can fossils tell you? What can geology tell you? And it's books like this, relatively new, The Stratigraphic Renaissance in the Cincinnati Arch, that demonstrates how the information that's put together by collections that have accumulated over the years, new collecting going on today, how that information is used to interpret a world that vanished 450 million years ago. And again, the authors, or some of the authors of the material here, are here tonight.
Stop bumping me.
One book I forgot to mention, which I think is fairly essential, is an old textbook. If you can find it, it's Invertebrate Fossils by Moore, Lacklicker, and Fisher. 1952, this particular version. What this does is it, again, we'll go to brachiopods. It has a chapter on the various phyla. It has a lot of material on how these beasts actually were when they were alive. In this case, it's showing the lophophores, the feeding mechanism in brachiopods, and where they were actually located in the shell.
Sit over there.
Of course, when we collect the fossils, if we're lucky enough to get one that's open, or just a half a fossil, you never see the lophophore. In this, to Cincinnati. Other places you do. If you're worried about terminology, you're reading one of the technical papers and you're wondering what they're talking about, they have a very, very complete list of any term that you might use with, say, in this case, brachiopods, so that you can make yourself as much of an expert as you want by using this textbook. Here's just an example of various brachiopods, but you'll notice Pleisimonas is something you might recognize out of the Cincinnati fossil book, Strophimeta. So this does cover the Cincinnati fossils. It doesn't touch on every one of them, but it certainly talks about the fossils in the Ordovician. So if you can find this textbook, it's a very good book to have to use with the other textbooks. This raises the question, where do I find these books? I say, you know, if you can find them. Well, I carried a hit list, I called it, of volumes that I wanted to get. Someone, I'm going to say 20 years ago, at a Dry Dredger meeting, suggested a list that you just absolutely had to have. And I carried that list around for about 20 years, going to old bookstores, used bookstores. Ohio Books downtown is one of the better ones that survive. The paleontology material, if it's there, it's going to be in the basement. The Ohio Survey material is up on a balcony right off the first floor if they happen to have it. Check and make sure it's the right volume, because a lot of them, they have a lot of survey books, but a lot of them don't have paleontology work in them. But there are other significant books, and Oakley occasionally has things. If you go to other cities, particularly around college towns, look for used bookstores. you might get lucky. I understand that you can get some of this on surfing the web, going to old book dealers. You know, if you can agree to their price, you can get it to buy it. Osgood was the last one. I'm going to say 15, 20 volumes that I was trying to get. I only got that about last year, and that was at Ohio Bookstore. And they just happened to have it in.
Why did they just happen to have it in?
Well, it happened that an old dry dredger had passed away, and his about a year later, his collection of books ended up at the Ohio Bookstore. And I walked in with Brenda from the Zinn Center just by chance, and we went downstairs to the paleo section, and there it was. She bought Bassler's Index, and I bought 4 or 5 volumes, including the Val's Index, which is over there in the stack. You want to look at it. So, you know, these books kind of get passed around, but you know, you just have to be very opportunistic, decide what you want, and keep trying, and take your time and build your library. Also, now this is one of the U.S. Geological Survey publications. It's on nautiloids. I happened to call the U.S. Geological Survey, and they told me they only had one publication left, and it was falling apart. And I said, send it. What I did was took it down to Ohio Books, and you can see this is Pete. And this was our speaker last month. It was his publication on cephalopods, fried. Anyway, I had it bound. And, you know, it's very nice. It's very permanent. If you find an old volume, you want to preserve it, take it down, have them bind it up.
You can download the PDF now, actually. It's the Deja Vu version of the file from the usgs.org website.
Yeah, and if you download the PDF, if you want it permanent, you know, you can have it bound too.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take this back a little further step. How many of you started out with this book? Okay, so this is also quite a useful book. I'm not sure if it still exists, but the Dry Dredgers used to have a display cabinet that was largely composed of Cincinnati fossils and a cut-up version of this book to illustrate the fossil families.
Rocks and minerals book they put out in that series is quite good too.
But this is a book that is really helpful for those who may not quite be able to drive yet, but to get them inspired and interested.
I think there is a slightly updated version, and I think you can buy it at the nature niche stores in the Hamilton County parks.
Just to make sure that we're clear that every book isn't interesting, there are some other books that you can spend the rest of your life and do without. This is an example of one. This is the Illustrated Encyclopedia of Fossils. Okay, if you're a fossil collector, you probably got one of these for your birthday at some point, because your family went to half-price books, saw a fossil book, decided you like fossils, here's the book. Okay, this particular book got some lovely photographs. It's a great little coffee table book. Nice for guests stopping by. But the information is badly translated, not very in-depth to begin with, and all of the specimens are from Europe. So unless you're collecting after your ski trip to Switzerland or something, this is probably not going to be pulled off your bookshelf or your coffee table a lot. The other type of book that you can do without are those that are put together to fill a niche. The fossils book, as we indicated, is part of a series with the Golden Books, and they seem to do a good job on most of the books in their series. The Audubon Society has a series of field guides, which may be very good for looking at birds, and I'm told that the seashell book is actually pretty good. The paleontology book, the fossil book, was put together in a bit of a hurry and on a budget. So they took what started out as full-color geologic maps with what should have been a full-color code geologic map. Field guides that are intended to cover the entire United States, essentially to cover the same material as